All right, brother. Dan, you think that Pantera doesn't have what it takes? Well, you need a walk-on homeboy, because Pantera is going to show a vulgar display of power on your ass like you've never seen before. So, listen to everything in Pantera's discography from very beginning to, I don't know, Reinventing the Steel, I think. Maybe I should do my research before this. And then you'll realize that Pantera is the only band, the one band that matters when it comes to metal.
All right. We're talking about Callisto tonight.
Yes, we are.
Hello. All right.
Callisto, yeah.
All right.
That's like in the...
Finland.
I was thinking like that Trivium song that's got Callisto in the title.
I don't like Trivium.
I know you don't. That's why I brought it up.
Well, we need to start this off right, I'm just saying. Or at least my definition of right.
So you got to bleep me out, so I'll say something obnoxious. Is that it?
Only on occasion.
Oh, okay.
And if you believe Jeff is obnoxious, deal with it, because you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Jeff. And the beep just got used again.
Woohoo! All right, cool.
What was the deal with Kellum? Where did that come from?
What are you talking about?
You didn't hear the intro?
No.
You're lucky. You'll hear it when the show posts.
Oh, you mean that 2-minute promo he did that
Yeah.
said that he was going to change my mind about something that I cannot ever have my mind changed on?
Yeah, I think he's calling you out, man.
Yeah, well, we'll do battle with Kellum at some point in the future.
Okay.
And he's just going to have to deal with it.
Hopefully it's just him.
Let's hope so.
So who are we talking about today?
We're talking about Callisto.
Why?
Because they're a Finnish metal band, and I like them.
I think the term metal is used loosely in this instance.
It's post-metal.
So it's not metal.
It is metal.
It was metal at some point. I'll give you that.
It's got thick,
Right.
heavy riffs, and a dark atmosphere, and there's screaming. It's metal.
There definitely is screaming, and I get a little bit of a Zayo feel off of it. Yeah, I think
we just discovered why Dan likes
that might be it.
Callisto.
I listened to this and I said, I don't know who they're trying to be. It sounds like Mars Volta decided to jam with Hope's Fall, Zayo, and The Fifth Element.
And how is that a bad thing? Those are all bands I like.
Well, I think we know how we got to this point.
Well, it's like this, Dan. If you take beer, which is awesome, you take ribs, which is awesome, you take ice cream, which is awesome,
Having trouble figuring out how
and
any
you
of this is
take
bad.
cherries, and it's awesome, and you put them all in a blender, mix it up, and then drink that, it's probably going to taste like shit.
Maybe. It's your opinion.
Well, tell you what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have you try it and let me know.
Sounds
what you
good to
think.
me, man.
All right.
But before we get into
Next
that,
week.
I'm going to take this
Yummy.
opportunity to say thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast. Thank you for subscribing. It really helps us out. We are on Google Play. We are on iTunes. We are on Stitcher. We are on TuneIn Radio. So if you have an Amazon Echo product, you can say to it, Alexa, play the latest episode of Discography Discussion, and she will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. Tweet at us. It helps us out. It lets us know you're listening, and we greatly appreciate it. And if you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
I'm feeling pretty perky myself tonight.
I think it's just cold in here.
Yeah, it is a little cold in here. So that's probably why I'm feeling perky.
Exactly.
One thing that always makes me feel perky are reviews. I love reviews. 5-star reviews on iTunes, preferably. I like all that stuff. You don't have to give me a 5-star review, but if you like the podcast, then give it a 5-star review. If you don't, give it whatever you think it deserves.
So, Dan, tell me all about Callisto.
Callisto is a Finnish metal band that formed sometime in the early 2000s. I'm not looking at it on Wikipedia like you guys are smart enough to do.
I haven't pulled up Wikipedia on this band. I know their first album came out in 2004.
Yeah, so
that's their first major release.
Right, they had a mini CD out before that called Ordeal of the Century, which I have actually, which is very strange. It's the only Callisto album I have physically. Everything else I've had to listen to on YouTube or on Google Play or on iTunes or all that stuff. So I haven't, I've got it all, but I've only got one physical. And so Callisto is what you would call kind of a post-metal band. This is the first band of this genre that we've talked about. And it's actually one of my favorite genres of music, which is kind of like what me and Buddy used to affectionately call doomcore, as it has a lot of the same characteristics as hardcore music or metalcore music, with growled or scream vocals, but it's done with a little bit more finesse, and it's a little bit slower pace, something more akin to what you'd hear with doom metal, which is where we came up with the idea of doomcore, and we like that. Never really stuck as a genre descriptor, but we like it.
See, I listen to this band and I say they were metal at some point, and the further on they go, the less metal you can call them.
Well, they were metal at the very beginning for sure. Ordeal of the Century is actually more metal, I think, than anything that they released as full-length albums, as that was a little bit more, a little heavier, a little crazier. Really good vocals with Callisto, especially on the early stuff. Sounds very reminiscent of Zao, which obviously is a trump card for me. But no, dude, Callisto played post-metal relatively well. So if you're still not really sure what I mean by bands like post-metal, go listen to something like ISIS or Cult of Luna. Like that's the kind of thing we're looking at here.
Okay.
Kind of a slower, dirgier, more depressing take on extreme music.
The band is my definition of random, in that it feels like each member of the band plays their own style, and they just kind of try to throw it together and see what fits and what works. For my taste, this type of band, there's a little too much instrumental. It's almost like, why is the vocalist there if he's not going to say anything? You have these long, drawn-out portions of the music where the band is just grooving, and I'm cool with that. But then the vocals come in, and it's like, oh, that's right, they have a vocalist in this band. And, I mean, it's post-metal, they have a saxophone.
Right, yeah.
The saxophone appears, and I'm thinking, how did this get past Dan? And he likes that, because Dan hates the saxophone.
I don't love the saxophone.
Well, there's a sax, and I think later on in one of the other albums, there's I guess they have a flautist as well guesting.
Yeah. They throw a lot in there. It's like a grab bag.
Yeah, and normally I'm a huge fan of that kind of stuff. It's fairly established now. I like stuff that's a little off the wall. People take left turns, try to make things a little unique, a little different. And it just didn't. This one just didn't catch me quite as much as some of the other stuff that we've talked about in the past that does that. Like a good example would be like the Contortionists. All of a sudden, boom, they really changed course. Lightened it up, and
they contorted.
Yeah, I mean they really did. But it was in a great way. I mean, because you were watching, this amazing gymnast do something that you don't think is physically possible. But for Callisto, it's more like watching me try to do it, and that's not a really good picture.
It's pretty harsh, man.
I know.
That's rough.
And it's not that it's bad, because it's not. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't grab me.
So a word that did grab me, I was reading reviews on Callisto this week, and one of the first words that came up was second tier. Are they a second tier post-metal band? And I what is meant by second tier is you've got the bands that are like definers of the genre. So you've got stuff like ISIS, you've got stuff like Neurosis, you've got stuff like Cult of Luna, like those kind of bands that are kind of like what people would consider to be the pinnacle of that genre. And so when they would call Callisto a second tier post-metal band, what they're getting at is that maybe Callisto's stuff has that spark, has that potential. I think they're a band that has the potential to be so much more than they are.
All right, that I will agree with.
But for some reason, there's just something about the songwriting and the choices that were made over the course of their discography that would make you kind of question that. Like, they've got the spark, but it doesn't seem like there's really a whole lot of follow through with it.
That is my biggest problem with this band. They have what I affectionately call the Mars Volta syndrome. When I'm listening to it, it's very good. It is what it is. The musicians are very talented. The vocalist is very talented. Put together as one giant product, it all works together. And then when I leave or I stop listening to it, I remember none of it. It's like going to a Fish concert. It's like, what did they play? Doesn't matter. Or going.
It's because you were high as a kite if you were at
You
a
went
Fish
to a
concert.
Fish concert?
I've gone to a couple.
The hell are you doing on this metal podcast?
Because he's diverse.
I go to Metallica too.
I guess that. I mean,
So you go to rock concerts too, is that what you're saying?
I'm not convinced. Joe, what are your qualifications for metal?
I play guitar.
Okay. I guess that's a thing. Anyway, so Callisto kind of busts onto the scene in 2004 with their first full length, which is called True Nature Unfolds. This is probably the album by Callisto that I've heard the most. And it's definitely one of my favorites out of all of them. This is Callisto at their most basic form. So this has got the post-metal thing down pretty well as far as it's slow. It's kind of got its own atmosphere. It's equal parts melodic and heavy. There's no clean vocals. It's all growled, screamed vocals. Like I said earlier, similar to Zao in a lot of ways, and it's my cup of tea. I really like True Nature Unfolds, and I don't really have any kind of problem with it. And it's actually a good enough record for me to say that I was kind of excited for what we were going to hear next.
Yeah, I'd have to say that out of the four full-length albums they have, this is easily my favorite of the four. And I think it's because it's, like you said, it's pretty established on what you're listening to. And I hate descriptors on, putting people in, certain genres. Because, either I like it or I don't. But yeah, this is pretty good. It's definitely listenable. And what I like about it is that I don't think there's necessarily really a bad song on the album. I guess the challenge that they have is there's also not a great song on the album either. So
I disagree, man.
I mean that's our opinions. I mean, I know you like these guys more than I do, but they're middle of the road. I will never call anybody second tier. I mean, I know that why people use that term.
Yeah,
but if they're second tier, metal band, then I'm like 900th tier podcaster. So
right, yeah, that's very true.
And that's kind of how I look at it. I'm never.
That's you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know you're an arrogant SOB. So you think you're the best shit on the face of the earth, and that's what works. I think that for you.
No, that's Joshua Toomey.
Oh,
it's the best shit on earth.
Yeah. But he's a Preds fan. I don't know if I can handle that.
All right. Well, we'll get into that some other time.
Truthfully, this is the only album I like from this band.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me what you like about it.
I like the droning. I like the attempt at creating atmosphere. There are aspects of other bands that I hear in this, such as the jazzy parts, the cleaner parts, very reminiscent of Between the Buried and Me. I would even go far enough to say that Between the Buried and Me was probably influenced by this band in some way. But for the most part, it's slowed down. I don't hear anything special. And after several listenings, I've tried to remember it, and I just don't.
I mean, I've been listening to it for years, so maybe that's where I differ.
It could be.
I can more or less tell the songs apart. I like kind of the jazzy, bluesy stuff that's going on in some of the tracks. I mean,
you can definitely tell it came out in 2004 because it has that new metal touch.
Maybe. I don't hear that, but
Yeah, I don't hear that either.
I hear it right now.
It's got kind of a jazzy, bluesy sound. My favorite songs on this record are Worlds Collide, and there's another one called Like Abel's Blood Cried Out for Revenge. Those are both really good songs. They're good and long, and I think they really capture what the band was going for on this record.
Yeah, Worlds Collide and Masonic, that's probably my two right there. But Worlds Collide is probably the best song on the album.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, if there's something that's going to edge on the close to, like what I was talking earlier about, all the songs are good, that's the one song that's probably the closest to great on here.
did you notice, too, that this record it wasn't trying to fill the hour like some of the other records were? This one they just kind of got in, did their thing, and then that was it. Whereas on later albums by this band, you'll notice
They meander
quite a bit, and it's almost like I look at the total play times on some of them, and it's like an hour and 8 minutes, or just an hour or whatever. And what bothers me about that is that it seems like there's a lot of meandering thrown in there just to get to that point. But it wasn't like this on the first album, and True Nature Unfolds. I mean, that record was really good in the regard in the sense that, they kind of just did their thing, and when it was over, and it didn't feel forced.
That would be my review. It doesn't feel forced.
Right. It's a legitimate thing.
It's very chill.
The funny thing is, I don't think this is their. It's not their most popular. Well, at least from the amount of listeners, it's not their most popular album. I think that's actually the next one, which is Noir.
Noir, yeah.
This is the first one I heard from them.
Noir.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it took a major left turn for me. I was not expecting it going from their first major release to Noir. I was like, wow, this is definitely different. And I think Noir is a very appropriate title. I was listening to it, it made me think of like the whole old school film noir stuff. As far as
I would say that's on purpose.
Yeah, I think so too. But that's what I felt like, and that's what I heard, and I was it wasn't my cup of tea.
It's melancholy.
Yeah,
and some people will call that meandering. Some people will call that boring. I thought it really worked here because this was a huge growth for the band. I think it was still growth at this point. I don't think it was. I don't think it was like something that they were like, okay, we're gonna change it up here. That I think was more of the first album. I think some of the more melodic, or there was more of the third album, but I thought Noir was growth. I think they moved forward while still retaining their old sound. I think this is still heavy.
There's parts that are heavy, but as a collective whole, it's to me it's not heavy at all. Is it dark and haunting?
Yeah,
sure. But I don't necessarily think it's heavy at all.
Yeah, but how well do you think that they achieved the atmosphere that they were going for here? I mean, the record's called Noir. I mean, does it not feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, but that doesn't mean that I have to like it. But yeah, you're right. If that's the goal that they were looking to achieve, then yeah, they probably, with some success, got what they were looking for. I mean, and obviously so. I mean, this is by far the most popular album as far as album sales and things of that nature.
Right.
So, apparently I'm in the minority because there's more people that liked it than disliked it compared to, I guess, my perspective. There's probably more people out there that think like you than me.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I liked the scream vocals on this one a lot. With the music, I thought it fit really well. It was more of a deeper register on this one than the previous, which was more growly. This is a little bit more like guttural.
Yeah, and actually, I do like that. I just wish there was more of it, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it
that's
comes
what
off
my thing is.
as more emotional. But I mean, Noir is literally the last Callisto record where the vocals are predominantly screamed. So that was, for me, I mean, like I said, like with Buddy loved this band just as much as I did back in the day, and obviously his big thing is the screaming. I didn't really care one way or another, but I did appreciate it, and I thought it really added to the atmosphere of this record. And I don't think that the songs are as meandering on this one as they were on later records. But this record, it seemed like they were just more focused on just, okay, because I mean on Noir, like we're listening to it right now, is one of the first songs where it's like they just kind of were like, okay, stop. Now we're gonna go into this. Now we're gonna go into this weird bluesy, jazzy.
Well,
segment.
yeah, because it makes you think of, like if you're watching like an old like LA Confidential. I mean, like an old film, or film noir stuff, and you're in some bluesy cafe. Everybody's got zoot suits on, and
there's a smoky haze in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
it's like my basement.
So I do get that, but it just wasn't expecting it. I guess I don't know. It just caught me off guard. And maybe that's my problem is, maybe if I had the established, tenure of listening to it like Dan has, I maybe my opinion would have changed, because I've only, listened to Callisto here and there throughout the years. I haven't been a steady consumer of their product. And maybe that's what my problem is, because one of my favorite bands of all time, even though it's not metal, is Sunny Day Real Estate. And the first time I heard it, I didn't care for it at all. I was like, what is this? And the more and more I listen to it, Diary is one of my all-time favorite albums. And it's because I listened to it over and over again, and it slowly grew on me. And maybe if I listen to these guys more, my opinion will change. And if it does, then I'll eat crow. But right now, it just doesn't hit me in the feels.
Yeah, I mean, it does for me, especially because I feel like I would be more of your guys' opinion on the band had the next record sounded just like True Nature Unfolds. A band like this can't not progress. Like if they stayed in that same style throughout True Nature Unfolds and through this record, I think I would have lost interest. I think there was still a little bit there was enough tidbits in this for me to really still get into it and still like it.
Right, and actually, even though I liked the previous album more, my favorite song is actually on this album, which is Woven Hands.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I really do like that, and I actually took your advice and started. I looked into the lyrics on it, and I think that's really the first time since I've started doing the podcast I actually paid a little closer attention to the lyrics. I've always been more about the emotional feel of it, and their lyrics are. I know they're a Christian band, but some of their stuff's kind of haunting, as far as lyrically speaking.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't even register it until we started doing this podcast. I never even registered them as a Christian band. I didn't think that was wasn't something I was looking for, I guess, when I got into it, and
it was hiding there the whole time.
I just liked the way it sounded. Yeah, so I mean, that I thought that was kind of cool and different.
Yeah, because normally, I mean, as everybody who's listened to this podcast knows, I mean, Dan's got a pretty established background in Christian metal. So I originally thought that's the reason why we were doing Callisto. And Dan,
I had no clue.
And he had no clue. And he texted me in the middle of the week. He's like, "Oh, dude, I just started reading the lyrics on some of this stuff." I'm like, and he's like, this is Christian stuff. And I'm like,
right.
Yeah, I thought that's why we were doing this episode. He's like, no, I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, typically on the show, we try to space the Christian bands out because I don't want anybody to get the impression that's all we're going to ever talk about. And so with Callisto, though, what I liked about it is it was not like a preachy. It wasn't like a Striper, Christian band thing. It was really cool. And I really loved what I heard. And the lyrics are despite having kind of a more positive angle, are still really damn depressing. And it's like almost a little too honest, like to the point where like some of the droning kind of makes sense because, at least to me, it makes sense on this record, especially when you couple it with the type of emotions that are being brought to the table on some of these lyrics. And you can pull up all their lyrics on darklyrics.com and read along with them. It's some good stuff, and I recommend it even if you're not from a religious background. I don't think it's going to dissuade you from what the band has going on. But yeah, I had no issues with Noir, honestly. I mean, it was one of my favorite records by them. It was long. It droned on a little bit. I mean, I don't...
Yeah, so this is what is this, a soprano sax or a clarinet? Can't tell.
That's a soprano sax.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, there was saxophone on on Noir.
Which is one of your red flags. So
I don't typically like it, but in this case, it worked pretty well.
Why is the saxophone in rock music a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing necessarily. I just hate the way it sounds most of the time.
No, I love Quarter Flash. You guys remember them? No.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
It's total like cheesy 80s rock. But the woman who fronted that band, that was the other thing that was interesting because it was early 80s. It was a rock band fronted by a woman, and she also played the sax. And she was pretty badass on the saxophone. But yeah, if you pull up some of their more popular stuff, if you're older, you'll know it. Otherwise, you'll hear your parents going, "Oh, I heard that song before." But yeah, it can work. Yeah, I promise you, Joe, that song gets better as time went on Woven Hands.
I think
You're definitely right. You're right. It's one of the best songs in the album.
I didn't have any issues with Noir, and I thought it was a really good step ahead for the band. And I think it gained them a lot more notoriety in that scene than maybe they had gotten with True Nature Unfolds, because even though True Nature Unfolds is my favorite, it's not like necessarily the most unique album out there. It's if you're into bands like that, you're not really going to see something like True Nature Unfolds and think, wow, this is really unique and different. I'm going to check this out. With Noir, it could change your mind about it.
I guess I just don't get it. Because this is Providence, 2009. Every place I look, this is labeled as metal.
Yeah, and I don't
hear it.
I don't hear it either. Actually, on the first song, In Session, I think they were listening to the Last Mohican soundtrack. Because
I'll give you that.
The guitar part sounds exactly like one of the songs that's used prominently in that film. And that's mainly because that's one of my all-time favorite movies. So I listen to that soundtrack more than I care to admit. Well, actually, I'll admit it. It's pretty fucking awesome. So I listen to it a lot.
I don't care what you guys say. I think this album's still metal, and it's different for sure. I don't think it's all that different than like what Opeth started doing later on. Like, it's not as like technically sound as Opeth, but
no,
the fact that I think the thing that I noticed that was weirdest about Providence when I first heard it was like, okay, wow, they're singing now. They've got clean vocals, and that was different for Callisto. Everything before that had predominantly been screamed. I mean, they had like guest vocalists before that
did the clean stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean,
my biggest problem with Providence is just from a production standpoint. There's a big drop off, in my opinion, from Noir.
It doesn't sound as good, yeah.
It doesn't at all. And I think I would like this one more, especially with the vocals sound distant to me. Maybe that was an educated decision on their end, but I didn't particularly care for it. I wanted the vocals to be a little more prominent and less. It just sounds like he's, I don't know. It's like foggy and hazy a bit with the vocals almost on the entire album, and I don't particularly care for that style personally, and that's just maybe why I wasn't as a big fan of it. This is the one I tortured my wife and kids when we were going to visit my parents, which is about an hour and a half away from my house, and we listened to Providence the entire time, and my wife goes, "This is boring." And
right, because she listens to tons of metal, right?
Yeah, well, that's what's the scary thing is my wife is like, let's listen to Better Than Ezra or New Kids on the Block, and normally she gets annoyed because everything's a little too loud, a little too fast, and she's like, this isn't metal, this is boring, is what she said. So
I look for the point, even on stuff that I don't like. I will take it with a grain of salt if somebody tells me it's the greatest thing ever. Great example of that is Colors by Between the Buried and Me. First time I heard it, I didn't get it. I'd listened to the Silent Circus. I'd listened to the self-titled Between the Bear and Me, and I just didn't get it. And I gave it a couple extra listens, and now I'm happy to say that every time I listen to it, I find something that I hadn't heard before that added to it. I listen to this, and I'm like, I can't say that I know what they're going for, because I don't. They're either trying to create atmospheric metal, and it's just not that good, or they're, like you said, Dan, trying to do what Opeth did. They're trying to slow down, but they're still going too fast.
Well, I would never describe Callisto as a fast band, but
Oh, definitely.
the thing is that, like, I mean, we're listening to Providence right now, and even in session, you get it about 2/3 into the song, and it kicks into gear, and it's heavy, and there's screaming, and so I don't know where you guys are getting the whole "it's not metal" thing from.
There, as a collective whole, I don't view it as metal. Is there a couple of portions on the album that are metal? Yes, and we're listening to one of them right now. But
Right.
it, to me, it's just as a whole, I wouldn't view this as a metal album, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we talk about, one of the previous episodes we did with the Contortionist, and now I'm kind of going back to that, but
You know what it is, Jeff? I think if I heard this band live, this is the wrong word, but I think if I heard them live, they'd be louder. I don't feel like the album is as impactful as it's trying to be, and that might be a failure of the production. Like, I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, okay, live, I swear there'd be more to hear.
Yeah, that's possible. And like I said, I agree with you too. That was the first thing that came off on me.
It's like somebody turned the reverb up to 50. It's like, no, dude. You realize that's for taste, and that's not for atmosphere. Anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing that I can't remember which. There's two songs, but one of them is really prominent, where they're trying to get a chorus of vocals, and they're using a synth to make the chorus of.
Is that Stasis, Dan? That has the big.
I think it might be Stasis.
Yeah, that one, that was a hard one for me to listen to, because everything was really good on that song, and it was becoming my favorite song on the album until that hit, and it just took me right out of the mood. And I felt like, man, like my Casio keyboard when I was a kid in the 80s could make the same sound. I'm serious. I'm like, what program are they using?
See, I guess I just didn't have as much of a problem, which is weird because I typically tend out of the three to be the most hypercritical one.
Yeah, this has been a really bizarre week for our listening.
It was definitely difficult for me because I had never listened to Callisto. I think I had heard the album Noir before and didn't realize it was this band because it seemed familiar when I listened to it. Having listened to the band, I feel like they've recorded 10 or 12 other albums that just don't exist.
Maybe.
Because it's almost like these are the low points. They almost feel like B-sides.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And don't get me wrong, is it atmospheric? Yes. Are the musicians clever and creative? I already said they were. I feel like they're doing something that other bands later did 10 times better. And maybe that's just the problem. It's like listening to rock and roll in the 30s and rock and roll in the 50s and rock and roll in the 90s. It's like if you hear it done better, the old stuff ceases to be as interesting.
This isn't that old. This is like 2009.
No, I'm talking about the band as a whole.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, you go all the way back in the day, and they're not playing this. They're still playing heavy shit.
That's partly my point. I don't understand what they're doing. I feel like they're trying to do something.
They're trying to progress. They're trying to do more than what they had done originally.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a prime example of them trying new things. And I normally I like that, but it just sometimes you try new things and it works, and sometimes you try new things and it doesn't.
See, I don't think that this doesn't work. I still don't think that there's anything that makes the band bad at this point.
I'm not saying that they're bad.
I'll get to that on the next record, but I still don't think that they've sucked yet at this point. I don't think.
Dude, I was the devil at the end of Catechumen on the 4th album. I'm like, no more, please, no more.
Yeah,
that was rough. Yeah,
the 4th album, I didn't listen to that one as much as I did the others because my mind was already made up, unfortunately.
So Providence, I mean, I thought Providence was a good record. I thought it wasn't exactly a step up from Noir. At best, it would be a sidestep, but I think in a lot of people's minds, it's probably a step back.
Yeah, and I don't think the production quality is not helping them at all. I wish that wasn't the case when I'm listening to music, but that one of my favorite bands, they're an industrial band called God Lives Underwater. Their final album, the production quality is so atrocious that I can't listen to it all the way through. Oh, here's my favorite part of this song. I'm kidding.
Favorite?
Is there really a favorite part, Jeff? I mean, we can't let it play out because we'll get flagged on YouTube. But
no, I was teasing that. I don't know what the hell's going on in the background right now. It's so fucked up. But yeah.
All right, Dan, you've given me 3 albums. What exactly are you trying to show me? Because if this is metal, we're off the deep end here. Like, we're not even in the same pool.
It's still metal. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like,
I think that we should name this episode Joe and Jeff Beat Up Dan.
I guess, but I mean, I still don't see how it's not metal. You know, fucking Opeth can put out a record like Sorceress, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, it's."
I never said I was a big Opeth
progressive
fan.
Metal or whatever, but like, Callisto's not allowed to do this.
No, they're perfectly allowed to.
Fucking Catatonia is allowed to do whatever the hell they want, but Callisto's not allowed to do this.
I never said that they're not allowed to do this.
This is all they do.
It's my. Just as much as it's your opinion to like it, it's my opinion to say that it didn't work whenever they tried something new.
Oh, come on, Jeff.
Okay, so
commit.
Here's what I'm going to say.
I am committing.
Here's what I'm going to say. Okay. Callisto is experimental. They're atmospheric. They're post-metal. They're not progressive.
Are they trying to be?
Even though that's a term that you want to apply to a band like this. It's on the tip of your tongue. You want to say it. Progressive. It's not.
It's not good enough to be progressive.
It's derivative, and the problem with it really lies with their entire discography is they're on the shoulders of bands that have done the same thing better, and they're trying to do their own thing, which is why it's so spastic, which is why there's so much differentiation between the songs, because they're trying to carve out their own sound, but they're not really doing it originally, and the songwriting itself suffers because you don't have the elaborate songwriting that you get with bands like Opeth or bands like Gojira. You don't have this idea of like, it doesn't seem like it's drawn out from beginning to end. In a lot of ways, it just sounds like a jam band that has hit a few good spots in places.
I definitely feel like there's no way a band like this would ever want to write a hook. And this isn't the type of music where you're looking for one.
No, I like putting Callisto on and doing something else.
All right, yeah, because I played Diablo 3 while I was listening to it.
So is this...
As did I a lot this week.
Is this the heavy metal elevator music then?
Oh, that's a really good term.
A little bit, yeah.
I'll definitely go for that.
If that's the case, episode over. We're done. We're good.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. This is elevator music for metal lovers. Yeah.
I think it just wants to be more than it is. But I don't necessarily have a problem with that inherently. I don't think it's a huge deal.
Yeah, I don't think this band is for the critical listener. That's what I'd have to say. I mean, because we're just...
I think they want to be for the critical listener.
Yeah, absolutely, but they're not. They tried and it just didn't work.
If we were walking through the record store and Dan pulls up this copy of Providence and says, "Joe, you got to buy this," It's $10. You got to take it home. You got to listen to it twice.
Listen to it while you're painting.
While you're painting, but listen to it twice. I think I'd find something in it, but I wouldn't jump up and say, I got to go buy all the Callisto records. I would never have that reaction to this.
With
Well,
Providence,
no.
I would have been disappointed that I spent full price money on it. I would have needed as a bargain bin.
I don't feel
Pick up.
that strongly about it, but I think
What? I mean, hey, at least I'm spending money on it. I mean, there's other bands I'd leave it all together.
Now,
So,
in contrast, if I had found Noir, I probably would have sought out another album and then would have been upset. Because I just think
it depends
Noir's
on
a
which
better
direction
album.
you went in.
Well, that's true.
yeah, because if you go earlier, you'd be very happy, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they're a band that's really good at making heavy music, which begs the question of why they stopped making heavy music.
All right, here we go. 2015,
Secret Youth.
Secret Youth.
Well, they did not find the Fountain of Youth. I'll tell you that.
Well, the weird thing, too, is that, like, so your actions speak louder than your words, right? So I'm saying, oh, yeah, I love Callisto. I like the stuff that they did. I don't know what your guys' problem is.
This is
all
our
this
problem.
stuff. However, you know, when I first was like, we should talk about Callisto this week, I was still very like True Nature Unfolds and Noir. That was all that I had listened to for years. You know, and so I didn't even know about Providence. I didn't even know about Secret Youth.
And there might have been a reason why you didn't know about either one of those albums.
Well, even though I just sing the praises of those albums, there's clearly a reason why I didn't continue on.
Right.
Even though I may not have known that consciously, I never wrote the band off or said I'm not on board anymore. But, you know, I started listening to better stuff and I kind of just grew out of it. So Secret Youth was completely new to me. And I can definitely say that I was not impressed.
Okay. Neither was I.
We're definitely in elevator country here.
Well, they're completely unrecognizable in this form. They don't sound anything like they did on the previous records.
Yeah, and like I've said before, normally that's not a bad thing for me, but we're gonna start calling this the Inflame Syndrome.
Oh, it's not that bad. I listened
right,
to,
I know,
listened to
but-
this
Now,
over-
Jeff, I have already defined the Mars Volta syndrome.
Okay, that's true. All right.
We can't describe
no.
3 diseases in one episode, or can we?
Sure we can.
Well, in this one, I just think that the songwriting wasn't really there. I think before they still came up with good parts. Like I said, I called them a jam band, and they're kind of like this now. But like the jam session just isn't as good. The good stuff that you get out of them jamming ideas out over the course of a 7 to 8 minute song, they're not really here on this record.
Yeah.
The songs just kind of meander along. They're singing over them, and the singing sounds a little half-hearted, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think part of my problem is if I want dark, brooding, and slow.
I'm going to
But
listen to
still- but
Kevin
it's-
Conroy do the Batman voice all night.
But it be metal, I'm gonna go listen to Ghost Brigade. That's actually what happens with this band. This band makes me want to go listen to Ghost Brigade, and Ghost Brigade just does it a hell of a lot better. I mean, granted, it's a little bit different style, but it just makes me want. It makes me want to go listen to something else. It's like, okay, I know what they're looking for, and I don't think they're quite getting there. So I want to go listen to something else. And it's like what, Dan said, with it being, I guess that's the part where they're second tier is they're kind of like a appetizer. They make you want to go for the full course.
Great opening band.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of how I'm looking at it now, is, hey,
They'd be great opening for Catatonia.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
They'd be great opening for The Contortionist.
Well, sure.
Open for Between the Buried and Me. In
Let's
fact,
get that tour together.
They're very reminiscent of 3. Or 3. Was it 3 or 3s that opened for Dream Theater and BT Bam?
That was 3s.
3s? Reminds me of them. And they had 2 drummers.
Yes, they did.
I'm going to sneak my final thoughts in here on this band. I would rather be listening to The Great Misdirect by Between the Buried and Me, thinking that it's going to be a successful follow-up to Colors, And not only that, I'd like to listen to Swim to the Moon on repeat.
I don't think it's like that. I mean,
This album.
Yeah, I mean, this album. I mean, but the thing is that I think every band has that album. They've got that misstep, the one that's just not quite there. And I think the worst thing about this record is it just sounds like a lesser version of Providence. It sounds like B-sides off of Providence. Like, these are the ideas that we had. They wouldn't all fit on that record, so we're going to save them for a few years and we're going to retool them and we're going to put them on this record. I just think that maybe there was an attempt to be more mainstream here that just really was lost on everybody that was listening to it. I think a lot of bands of this ilk, I think whenever you go and see Callisto live, you're just kind of hoping they play the old stuff.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing that I will say is I do want to hear more of his clean vocals where it's actually the focal point. I think
it's always in the background, they're not they're not confident with him.
Right, and I think they should. I think they get somebody in there to do some proper mixing and put him in the forefront. I think I might actually like him more, and I think that's probably part of my problem is that I'm big on the singers. I got to be able to relate emotionally with them.
Well, no, even his scream vocals are turned down.
Right, and I just can't. Maybe that's part of my problem. I just feel like I can't make a connection with him, and I want to, because I think he's got a decent enough voice to make it happen. But like Dan said, it's almost like they don't have enough confidence in him to put him in the front. He's more of an accompanying piece.
Right. It never becomes, it never becomes like we're going to take this to the next level. It's like when things get real, they just fall back into the noir sound.
Right.
And they just kind of rely on that. Because there's a few songs on Hidden Youth that actually sound like they sound like noir. Like they tried to go back to that. And I think it was one of those we've got this fan base, so if we don't appeal to them, then who are we? And I applaud them for that.
Yeah,
however, it doesn't work
with
with what they're trying to do here, because they're trying to say that every record is a progression off of the last record, but it really isn't like that. I mean, sure, Noir was a progression off of True Nature Unfolds, but that's about it. Providence didn't really progress off of Noir, and Hidden Youth didn't really progress off of Providence. So what you get is just a band that's more or less kind of been doing a lesser version of the same thing with each subsequent record. And I think they just do that because that's safe. That's the safe Callisto sound. Which is weird because most spastic bands, it's not like that. It's not like, oh, we're going to play it safe. It doesn't seem like they're playing it safe. But if you really listen to it, throughout, you start realizing that, yeah, actually, this is them playing it safe. They're afraid to take it in a totally different direction.
I feel like we skipped something.
I don't think that's it.
We didn't. There's another Callisto band on streaming services that's like an electronic, I think.
Yeah, it's like dance stuff.
That was going to be my question, because I discovered, yeah, there is two. That's funny. Apparently there's another band called Callisto that is electronic and has a 4-song album on here with 20-minute songs, so that's definitely electronic.
Yeah, for sure.
Or it's the latest release from Between the Baron and Me.
Right. Or it is Callisto, but they're just have completely gone off the deep end. But no, I mean, so
final thoughts, Dan, because I know you could go on and on.
Final thoughts. I like the band. I think that they could do really good. They just haven't.
My final thoughts is they tried and just didn't quite get there. I mean, so they were close and just didn't quite get what we were looking for.
It was like a C+, right?
Yeah,
it's not a straight. It's not a straight F.
No. It's definitely not an F. I mean, because there's stuff that, we've heard me go off on In Flames with Battles.
Right, they're getting credit for trying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you can see that there's something there. It just, like I said, there's nothing bad, but also there's not anything great. So I think, a solid C+ is an accurate grade because, they're in the middle of the pack. Joe, what have you been listening to this week? I gotta know.
I've been listening to this. I've been listening to Callisto.
Oh, I've been
trying to get it.
Is that it?
I will always try to get it. No, that's not the only thing I've been listening to.
Well, what else have you been listening to?
Well, let's look at my list, because that's the great thing about streaming services now. They keep track of everything you do, unless you go in there and tell them to stop.
You listen to some Pantera, possibly?
Not yet. I might be prepping for something based on Kellum's comments. I have been listening to Sabotage.
Ooh.
I've
Nice.
mentioned Sabotage on the show before. If you don't know, it is the TSO. The TSO makes them a heck of a lot more money. But
That's an
they released some pretty 80s metal records throughout the 80s and 90s.
That's
that
not a bad thing.
I'm a fan. If you're a guitar player, I would recommend Hall of the Mountain King to anybody that swears by any 80s hair metal. They're not hair metal. In fact, I'd call them Baroque metal, which might be a weird
Yikes.
thing. Yeah, I know, but it's good. You'd like it. Before we go to the ending here, Dan, Invisible Teeth returns.
Yes. With a lot of cool comments. This guy listens to the podcast, which I love, and he gives a very long very long opinion / comment on what we talked about. I really enjoy that. He doesn't agree with us all the time, but I can tell you that
He knows his stuff.
I would listen to. I mean, I would take one of those types of comments over 100 "good job, guys" type of comments.
You know, there was another comment on the Facebook page from, is it Robbie?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's him. Though.
I'm pretty sure it's the same guy.
Yeah, yeah, just based on the sheer amount of comment.
But what did he have to say about Haste the Day?
Oh, that we had given way too much credit to Jimmy Ryan and Stephen Keach. And he's right. I mean, like, going back and listening to it, we were very like, oh my God, these vocalists, I just want to get them in a hotel room alone and have my way with them. And we were very much like that.
So?
In typical Dan fashion, focus on the screaming vocals. And
Right, I do that. I tend to do that. So that's what I have you guys for. You're supposed to keep me from being that way. But
that might
Jeff over here was just on the same train, so we just went with it.
Yeah,
that might be the problem with most of the metalcore bands that exist, is the clean vocals fall into the background of your thought because it's almost like an effect.
Good cop, bad cop vocals.
It's not that it's bad, it's that they all sound the same, but to be fair, Haste the Day kind of did it better than most, so they were probably the influence for
Yeah, I
most
thought
of
we
those other
talked a
groups.
fair amount about Keach's clean vocals.
We did. I mean, the whole thing is that there were people singing, obviously, on the old Haste the Day records
Yes.
that we really didn't mention.
He actually recommended the band Last Chance to Reason, so I'll be taking a look at that.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, like, all this stuff was great. Good comments, good discussion. I talked a little bit further than that, but yeah, no, he's right. I mean, every now and again on these podcasts, we have a limited amount of time that we can actually talk. So, sometimes things get left out, and I apologize for that, but it'll happen. We'll try to be more thorough in the future, but if we're not, then, we got somebody that'll set us straight. So I'll take that any day.
Yeah, I like that. It's constructive, and the guy knows his stuff. I mean, he's got some really cool information to give. So definitely check out the comments, because he's got quite a bit to say, especially also about the contortionist. He had some really interesting things to say about that.
He actually brought up Coheed and Cambria as a space-themed band.
Yeah,
What?
there absolutely are.
I agree with that.
I don't know if the albums sound like space as much as Hopes Fall, or equally space rock bands.
Well, I mean,
their story, their overall
yes.
idea is like, yeah, it is outer space.
Yeah, no question.
Definitely should have thought of that, but I was trying to think.
It's Star Wars, but in space. Oh, wait.
And it's starring Claudio Sanchez.
Oh, yes.
That dude is
we'll talk
talented.
about Coheed sometime if we can get away with it, but I don't know if we can get away with it.
Yeah, we can. We got away with the contortionist. We can get away with Coheed and Cambria.
Maybe we can.
Well, we sure as hell got away with Callisto.
Yeah, well, you know what? I've actually been listening to a different post-metal band.
How many post-metal bands do you have listed
A
in
few
there,
of them.
Dan?
But I've been listening to Give Me Rest by Hands. It's a really good one.
What about you, Jeff?
I've been listening to some weird shit that's really, really good.
Shocker.
Oh, yeah, I know. I got to find the weird shit, and it's Black Crown Initiate, and I've been listening to their newest release, Cells We Cannot Forget. It is fucking awesome. So, just go check it out. It's a little all over the place, but in a good way.
And on that note, this has been episode 20 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. Keep your eye on our blog, which is at blog.discussmetal.com, or you can find it at the homepage. We'll be doing a couple unboxings. I know Dan and I ordered a 20 for 20 from Face Down, so we'll be opening that up to see what we got. There might be some trades going on. It'll also be on YouTube, and we'll be sharing that everywhere we share stuff. Again, thank you for listening. We will see you guys next week. Somebody strangle that fucking goat.
Why'd you point that shit this way, man?
It definitely has begun.